Hi there, myth and history lovers. This is Mr. P of Mr. P's Mythopedia here, and I have yet another pretty amazing and particularly awesome tale from deep in the treasure chest of world mythology. This time we're going to travel back in time and into the dusty, arid lands of one of the most diverse continents in the world to get a pretty cool story that I'm sure many of you have probably never ever heard of. We're going to be heading into the folklore of Western Africa, in what is today the modern-day country of Mali, in the grasslands of the Sahel region where the Sudan River flows. We are going to tell a tale of a young prince who wanted so badly to be something he wasn't that he ignored all of the things that he truly was and could be. A prince who had to undergo his own journey to figure out who he was meant to become, something we all can relate to one way or the other. So, what's this story called, you might be asking? Well, the story itself is called GASSIRE'S LUTE. Not lute as in pirate lute, but lute as in an instrument. Sort of a guitar-like instrument that people in Western Africa still use today to tell their tales. The story itself was originally told by African storytellers slash musicians slash performers called griots. Griots had to learn their actual songs by memory, and were not allowed to write anything down. They had to memorize every single thing that they were ever told so they could repeat it to their culture and have everybody understand what was going on. Kind of like human recording machines. These guys would go around to village and sing the different epic songs and stories of their culture. Pretty amazing when you think about it, since they'd have to go generation to generation passing these stories on, word for word, without any mistakes. So that's the way it went on for hundreds of years, and it wasn't until much later, until the Arab traders came in, that people started writing these stories down for posterity. Sadly, a lot of them have been lost. So the story I'm going to tell you today actually comes from a larger poem called the Dausi, which sadly is now mostly lost to time. It comes from the Soninke, which were Gassire's people, and the story he was part of was chanted, sung, and played by the Griot bards for centuries, word for word. In fact, the cool thing about this story is it's the story of how the first griot came to be, and that would be Gassire. Sort of mythology, more of a legend. Is it a true story? Hard to say, but this probably did happen in similar fashion. Okay, the first griot probably did crop up somewhere out of necessity. Somebody had to pass on the tale of their civilization, and in this story, it's Gassire that gets to do that. Just so happens I'm going to read the entire poem for you in its entirety right now, as it was spoken. I'm going to do my best to get the right feel of the story as it was meant to be told. I'm no griot, but I'm not too shabby as a storyteller, and so I'll do my best for all of you out there listening. So settle in, and maybe even download the PDF version of the story from the link in the description below, so you can read along and enjoy the epic story of GASSIRE'S LUTE. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you after the story. 4 times Wagadu rose, a great city gleaming in the light of day. 4 times Wagadu fell and disappeared from human sight. Once through vanity, once through dishonesty, once through greed, once through discord. 4 times Wagadu changed her name. First she was called Diera, then Agada, then Ghana, then Scylla. 4 times Wagadu turned about, facing first to the north, then to the west, then to the east, then to the south. 4 gates have always led into Wagadu. Thus men have always seen them, one to the north, one to the west, one to the east, and one to the south. From these directions comes the strength of Wagadu, her power which endures, whether she be built of stone, of wood, or of earth, or whether she lives only as a shadow in the memories and hopes of her children. For in truth Wagadu is not of stone, not of wood, nor of earth. Wagadu is the strength which lives on in the hearts of men. Sometimes she becomes known when men's eyes see her, and their ears hear the clash of swords and the clang of shields. Sometimes lost to view, when wearied and oppressed by the strife of men, she sleeps. For the first time sleep came to Wagadu through vanity, the second time through dishonesty, the third time through greed, the 4th time through discord. Should Wagadu ever rise again, she will live with such power in the minds of men that she can never be again lost. She will endure with such strength that vanity, dishonesty, greed, discord can never again harm her. Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Scylla, ho, Fasa. Each time Wagadu was destroyed through the faults of men, she reappeared with greater splendor. Vanity brought the songs of the bards. Dishonesty brought a shower of gold and precious stones. Greed brought the art of writing to the women of Wagadu. The fifth Wagadu will arise from discord to endure as the rains of the south, as the rocks of the Sahara. Every man will then bear Wagadu in his heart. Every woman will have Wagadu in her sons. Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Silla, ho, Fasa. First facing north and called Diara, ruled by Naganamba Fasa, Wagadu was lost through vanity. Strong were the Fasa and brave. Day after day they fought against the Burdama and the Baroma slaves. There was no end to the fighting, and out of the fighting the strength of the Fasa grew. All Naganamba's men were heroes, all the women lovely and proud of their men. But the Fasa were growing old. All who had not fallen in single combat with the Burdama were growing old. Naganamba was very old. Gassir, his son, himself with 8 sons, each son with sons. Naganamba ruled over them, and over all the Fasa, and over the dog-like Baroma. Because of him, because he grew so old, Wagadu was lost. The Baroma crept away, fleeing from the old Fasa's rule. Again they became slaves to the Burdama. And with the Burdama's swords together they conquered Wagadu, called Diara. Had Naganamba died sooner, would Wagadu have fallen for the first time? Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Silla, ho, Fasa. Naganamba did not die. A jackal gnawed at Gassir's heart. Each day Gassir asked his heart, "When will Naganamba die? When will Gassir be king?" Each day Gassir longed for the death of his father, as a lover watches for the evening star to rise. By day, when Gassir fought as a hero against the Burdama, when he drove the treacherous Baroma before him, with the leather girth of his saddle, then he thought only of the fighting, of his sword, of his shield, of his horse. With the evening he rode into the city, and sat in the circle of men and his sons. Gassir heard the heroes praise his deeds, but his heart was not with them. His heart was full of misery and longing, longing for the shield of his father, the shield which he might carry only when his father was dead. Longing for the sword of his father, the sword which he might draw only when he was king. Each day Gassir's rage and longing grew. Sleep passed him by. Gassir lay, and a jackal gnawed at his heart. Gassir lay, and anguish climbed into his throat. One night he could no longer rest. He sprang from his bed, leaving his house. To the wise man Kiokoro went Gassir. "Kiokoro, when will my father die? When shall I carry his shield and sword?" "Ah, Gassir, Naganamba will die soon enough. But if you never carry his shield and sword and shield will others inherit. You will carry a lute, and your lute shall cause the loss of Wagadu. Ah, Gassir." "Kiokoro, you are not as wise as I thought. How can Wagadu be lost? Her heroes triumph daily. Your vision is false, and you are a fool, Kiokoro." Then the wise old man spoke again. "Ah, Gassir, you may not believe what I say now, but your fate will lead you to the guinea hens of the fields. You will hear and understand what they say. They will tell of your fate, and the fate of Wagadu. Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Silla, ho, Fasa." Gassir was angry. Again he went into battle with the Burdama. He called to the heroes, "Stay here, tonight I fight alone." He rode forth to battle. Gassir hurled his spear. Gassir charged the Burdama. Gassir swung his sword. He struck down Burdama on the right. He struck them down on the left. Gassir's sword was as a sickle mowing the grain. The Burdama were stricken with terror. They cried, "That is no Fasa! That is no mere hero! That is a Damo!" The Burdama turned their horses. The Burdama threw down their spears. Each of them threw down his 2 spears as they fled. Gassir called his men. Gassir said, "Gather up the spears." They sang as they gathered the spears. "The Fasa are all heroes. Gassir has always been the greatest of the Fasa. Gassir has always done great deeds, but today Gassir was greater than Gassir. The heroes rode behind Gassir into the city. They sang, "Never before has Wagadu taken so many spears as today." In the city Gassir was honored, but when the men gathered, Gassir did not join them. Gassir wandered into the fields. He heard the guinea hens. Gassir drew close to them. A guinea hen sat upon a bush and sang, "Hear the Dausi! Hear my deeds!" The guinea hen sang of its battle with the snake. The guinea hen sang, "All creatures must die, be buried and vanished. Kings and heroes die, are buried and vanish. I too shall die, shall be buried and vanish. But the Dausi, the song of my battles, shall not die. It shall be sung again and again. It shall outlive all kings and heroes. Oh, that I might do such deeds. Oh, that I might sing the Dausi. Wagadu will be lost, but the Dausi shall endure and live. Ho, Diara, Agada, Gana, Silla. Ho, Fasa." Gassir went again to the old wise man. "Kiorkoro, I was in the fields. I understood the guinea hens. The guinea hen boasted that the song of its deeds would outlive Wagadu. The guinea hen sang the Dausi. Tell me, are there men who know the Dausi? And can the Dausi last beyond life and death?" The wise man said, "Gassir, you are rushing to meet your fate. No one can stop you. And since you will not be a king, you shall be a bard. Ah, Gassir. When the kings of the Fasa lived by the sea, they were also great heroes then. They fought against men who carried lutes, men who sang the Dausi. The Dausi of the enemy often struck terror into the hearts of the Fasa, who were themselves heroes. But the Fasa never sang the Dausi, because they were of the first rank, the Horo. The Dausi could be sung only by those of the second rank, the Diaru. The Diaru fought not so much as warriors to win the battle of the day, but as drinkers to relish the fame of the evening. But you, Gassir, now that you will no longer be the second of the first, now you shall be the first of the second, and Wagadu will be lost because of it." And Gassir answered, "Then let Wagadu be lost. Ho, Diara, Agada, Gana, Silla. Ho, Fasa." Gassir sought out a smith. He said, "Make me a lute." And the smith said, "I will make you a lute, but it will not sing." Gassir said, "Smith, you do your work. The rest is my affair." The smith made the lute. He brought the lute to Gassir. Gassut seized the lyre. He struck upon it. The lute did not sound. Gassir said, "What is this? The lute does not sing." And the smith replied, "I told you it would not. I have done my work. The rest is your affair." Gassir asked, "What must I then do?" The smith spoke, "The lute is but a piece of wood. Without a heart it cannot sing. You must give it a heart. Carry the wood on your back when you go to battle. The wood must ring with the strokes of your sword. The wood must absorb the blood of your blood, the breath of your breath. The pain must be its pain, your fame its fame. The lute cannot be just the wood of a tree. It must blend with you and your people. Therefore it must not live only with you, but with your sons. Then the singing that comes from your heart will echo in the ear of your son, and live on in your people. And your son's lifeblood oozing from his heart will live on in this piece of wood. Only then will it sound. But Wagadu will be lost because of it." Gassir said, "Then let Wagadu be lost. Ho, Diara, Agada, Gana, Silla. Ho, Fasa." Gassir called his 8 sons. "My sons, today we go to battle. But the strokes of our swords shall echo, not only through the Sahel, but shall ring for the ages. You and I, my sons, will live on. We shall outlive all other heroes. We shall live on in the Dausi. My eldest son, today we too, you and I, will be the first in combat." Gassir placed the lute over his shoulder, and together with his eldest son went first into the field. They charged the Berdama. Gassir and his eldest son fought as the first. They left the other heroes far behind them. Gassir fought not like a human being, but like a Damo. His eldest son fought not like a human being, but like a Damo. In the thick of the fighting, Gassir was hard pressed by 8 Berdama. His son came swiftly to his side and struck 4 of them down. Then one of the Berdama thrust a spear through his heart. Gassir's eldest son fell dead from his horse. In his rage, Gassir gave a great shout, and the Bradama fled. Gassir dismounted and lifted the body of his son upon his back. Then he mounted and turned, and rode slowly back to the other heroes. The heart's blood of his eldest son dropped onto the lute. Thus Gassir, at the head of his heroes, rode into Diera. Ho, Diera! Agada! Ghana! Scylla! Ho, Fasa! Gassir's eldest son was buried as a hero, and all Diera mourned. That night Gassir took his lute and struck against the wood. Still the lute did not sing. Gassir's anger mounted. He called his sons and said, "Tomorrow we ride again to combat." For 7 days Gassir rode with the heroes to battle, and every day he took one of his sons with him to be the first in the fighting. And on every one of these days Gassir carried the body of one of his sons over his shoulders and over the lute as they rode back into the city. Thus, at the end of every day, the blood of one of his sons dropped onto the lute. After the 7 days of fighting, there was a great mourning in Diera. All the heroes and all the women wore their mourning clothes of red and white. All the women wailed, all the men were angry. Before the 8th day of the fighting, all the heroes of Diera gathered, and they spoke to Gassir. "Gassir, this must come to an end. We fight willingly, but only as we must. In your rage you go on fighting without need, and without end. Now go forth from Diera. Take those who would join you. Take your slaves and your cattle. As for us, we desire more of life than fame. And while we should not like to live fameless, we have no wish to die for fame alone." And the old wise man said, "Ah, Gassir, thus will Wagadu be lost today for the first time because of your vanity. Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Scylla, ho, Fasa." Then rode Gassir out into the desert, and with him rode his last, youngest son, and his wives, his friends, his slaves, and his cattle. They rode through the Sahel. The heroes who had fought beside Gassir rode with him through the gates of the city. Then many turned back, but some followed Gassir and his son into the Sahara. They traveled far. Day and night they rode. They came into the wilderness, and there in the loneliness they rested. All slept. All the heroes, the women, the slaves. Gassir's youngest son slept, but Gassir himself did not sleep. Gassir sat alone by the fire listening. Then close beside him Gassir heard a voice. The lute was sounding. It rang as though it came from within itself. Gassir listened and trembled as the lute sang the Dausi. When the lute had sung the Dausi for the first time, King Naganamba died in the city of Diera. When the lute had sung the Dausi for the first time, Gassir's rage melted. Gassir wept. When the lute had sung the Dausi for the first time, Wagadu was lost for the first time. Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Scylla, ho, Fasa. 4 times Wagadu rose, a great city gleaming in the light of day. 4 times Wagadu fell, and disappeared from human sight. Once through vanity, once through dishonesty, once through greed, once through discord. 4 times Wagadu changed her name. First she was called Diera, then Agada, then Ghana, then Scylla. 4 times Wagadu turned about, facing first to the north, then to the west, then to the east, then to the south. 4 gates have always led into Wagadu. Thus men have always seen them, one to the north, one to the west, one to the east, and one to the south. From these directions comes the strength of Wagadu, her power which endures, whether she be built of stone, or wood, or of earth, or whether she lives only as a shadow in the memory and hopes of her children. For in truth, Wagadu is not of stone, not of wood, nor of earth. Wagadu is the strength which lives in the hearts of men. Sometimes she becomes known when men's eyes see her, and their ears hear the clash of swords and the clang of shields. Sometimes lost to view, when wearied and oppressed by the strife of men, she sleeps. For the first time sleep came to Wagadu through vanity, the second time through dishonesty, the third time through greed, the 4th time through discord. Should Wagadu ever rise again, she will live with such power in the minds of men that she can never again be lost. She will endure with such strength that vanity, dishonesty, greed, discord can never harm her again. Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Scylla, ho, Phassa. Each time Wagadu was destroyed through the faults of men, she reappeared with a greater splendor. Vanity brought the songs of the bards. Dishonesty brought a shower of gold and precious stones. Greed brought the art of writing to the women of Wagadu. The fifth Wagadu will arise from discord to endure as the rain of the south, or the rocks of the Sahara. Every man will then bear the Wagadu in his heart. Every woman will have Wagadu in her sons. Ho, Diara, Agada, Ghana, Scylla, ho, Phassa. And so there you have it, the driving, powerful story of GASSIRE'S LUTE. A prince who wanted one thing, but realized over time that there was something else he was destined to do, and that was pass on the story of his whole civilization after it fell. Pretty cool to think of a lute that actually plays itself from the blood of downed heroes. As a storyteller, I'm actually very excited to tell this kind of story because it just strikes out as a very powerful piece of African literature. So I hope you did enjoy it, I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you did learn something about Western Africa in general, and the Soninke people in particular. And if you happen to be an educator and you're using this for your classroom, for your classes to listen to, please feel free to use the link in the description below. There is a PDF version of the tale that I've put out there for you guys to use. Please use it, hand it off, copy it to your students, and allow them to enjoy this story. And if you really dig mythology, legends, and other supernatural weirdness, feel free to subscribe to this channel for more, or come to my other project, Mr. P's Mythopedia, at the links provided in the video description. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you again real soon for another spoken tale of ancient awesomeness.